That's not the right slides. There we go. Upload. See if they figured this out. Share slides. Oh, look at that. All right, cool. Confirm my slide selections. Excellent. Alrighty. Hey, Erica. All right, we'll give 2 more minutes for people to show up, and then we'll dive into it.
Hi there, Sean.
Hello.
It's Drew from Apple.
Okay.
I successfully navigated the the Meet Echo.
Yeah, it's if you've not done an IETF meeting before, this is new and exciting. It's not the
no, I have. It's been a hot minute, so
yeah, it's not the usual. It's not the usual Zoom / WebEx experience.
They're all terrible. So
yeah, I don't know about terrible. I'm happy to not be on a plane personally. Let me get that up. Okay, get that in the window. That's what we want because we may be walking through that repo.
there we go. Yeah, I was going to say I see other Apple people as yeses on the invitation. So there's Corbin.
Hey, Drew.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all.
Hi, Corbin. How are you?
Good. How are y'all?
Christina's having a little
Nice to see
problem.
your faces.
Yeah, hey. All righty. This is funny because this is actually more people than we normally get at a meeting in person. So I think this is boding well for my suggestion to not meet in Madrid and just have a meeting afterwards a couple of weeks later. All right, we'll give it 1 more minute and then we're going to jump in. And again, for people to know, this session is being recorded, so mind your P's and Q's. All right, look at that. Ooh, more people. Look at that. It worked. All right, I guess we'll get started. Hi, this is the IETF virtual interim for the DULT working group, the first one we're ever having. I'm Sean. Hi. Erica is my co-chair over there, so just want to say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
I'm Erica.
Yeah. Just go through the slides real quick. Since this is an official meeting, I just want to let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. This is the note. Well, again, it's an official meeting of the IETF, so we need to follow the policy and procedures. This is a lot of this is about IPR related kind of things. So if you know something, say something is pretty much the mantra here. There's some other things listed there, but I'll get to those in the next slide. Again, this is the note really well. Basically, just this kind of like summarizes kind of like keep it professional. We don't need to beat each other's throats. You cannot like somebody's ideas, but you should really kind of like the person. So it's okay to criticize the idea, but not so much the person. And we'll try to keep that in play. Again, if you have any problems or you think you've been slighted in any way, you can contact the chairs. You can contact Deb, who's our AD. He's also on the call here, or the Buds people. And again, feel free. We should be good to go, but you never know. Again, it's a virtual session. I think I copied this from the IETF meeting thing. So just, you're all here, you know how to use the thing. If you've uploaded slides, I think Sadiqa is the only person that uploaded slides. I will be able to run the walking through the GitHub repo in a window that we can share if we need to go do that. If anybody has any slides they want to share, they can also do that. But I will ask that if you have slides that you want to share, that you send them to me so I can get them uploaded. And basically, we got 3 documents. We should have 4, but eventually we'll get there. So I think right now we're just going to try to go through the basic set of documents. And I just threw out like literally just the 3 documents. Like the threat model, the protocol, and the finding document. And we'll go through that unless there's somebody who wants to bash the agenda to figure out which one would be better to go through first. Brent?
Yeah, I had a quick unrelated question.
Sure.
I believe our charter says we're supposed to be wrapping up this effort in this summer.
Yeah, that's all. That's charter milestones are fictional.
Great. Okay, thank you.
We can literally change those at any time. If you have some better dates that you think are better, feel free to suggest them and we can update those. Usually that is, I think probably the dates were based on the fact that we had hundreds of people in the room and we were being very aspirational, and that's just not come to pass. So we can change those. And if you look at most milestones in the IETF, you'll note that they're aspirational at best.
Okay, cool. Well, I think I kind of encouraged those dates in the initial
fair
discussion, so
Yeah.
I think I'm not going to suggest new dates at this juncture.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. But before we go on, we will need to ask for a scribe because we need somebody to take notes for us. And this is where we have the awkward pause while people are like, am I going to do this to help this working group get going?
I'm happy to take the notes.
Oh, Erica, you gave in. You're so nice. As a chair doing this is like.
Oh, I like taking notes though.
All right. Okay. Okay. So, Maggie, I see you're there. Do you want to is there any objections with starting with the threat model? How's that
No,
work?
I'm happy to talk about it. Maybe you can
Okay.
just share the GitHub issues page. We can look at the same thing.
Let me see if I can do that. Let's stop these slides share. I will share my screen. I don't want to share. Do you want to share a screen? I do, but I don't want to share that screen. I want to share this screen. Okay. Yes, I want to share my screen. Allow to share window. There we go. Bink. All right. All right. Jump into threat model. If I go too fast, I apologize. Hopefully no one will get seasick. All right. Where do you want me to go? Pull requests or issues?
Just go to the issues page.
Okay.
So basically, just to summarize for people who, are not following all the GitHub repos as closely as some of us are, we have been working on coming up with different attack vectors. So like things that might be threats to the DULT protocol. So things like disabling a speaker or a replay attack or an impersonation attack. So we have a whole set of attacks that several of us have been working on. And then we also have been trying to rethink the taxonomy that we've been working on. So that's basically like coming up with examples and scenarios for unwanted tracking. The tax is getting to the point that I think it's like almost done. And then the taxonomy is going to need another look. And Jesse is going to be working on that in the next couple of weeks. In terms of open issues and things, I think the stuff that needs feedback from this group the most is that I have a draft pull request about terminology that the whole group could potentially adopt. And then the other big topic that I think myself and the accessory protocol people have been talking about is about remote disablement. So basically the idea is right now, if you physically find an accessory, you can query it or through your phone to figure out obfuscated owner information. And one of the big things we've been talking about is the fact that people might not be able to physically find a device, but they still might want to be able to disable it. And how do we think about ways that could potentially support survivors while not creating chaos and having, benign tags get disabled left and right? And that's a big thing where we don't really have a great answer to that yet. So I would say in terms of the things from our document that I think we could talk about as a group, it would be definitions and remote disablement are the big ones. There's other issues that we're working on, but I think those are probably can be handled offline.
Did you want me to pull any of the specific text up to review it, or?
So we only have an hour, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Those are my bids for things to talk about, but I don't know what other people want to talk about too. So
Yeah. All right, Sadika.
I have some scenarios and everything for the remote disablement discussion. So I don't know if you want to do that after I present also. Maggie, we can handle that maybe.
that would be fine. Yeah. If you also have slides on that, then
I
that's fine
do.
with me. Yeah. So maybe you can just flash up the if you have the pull request section. Sorry, I didn't realize I should have made slides for this. Otherwise, I would have just done that. Under the draft pull request 102. I'm just going to show people like what I've been working with. If people have opinions on this, they should comment. Basically, what I did is I took the definitions that were in the accessory protocol document, and then I took a bunch of definitions that were in the other two documents, and then I tried to organize them and write them in a way that would make sense for all of our documents, knowing that certain documents will have to have terms that aren't in every document. But I think the threat model document will at least have the high level type ones. And the resolution is kind of bad, so I can't really read the text very clearly, but maybe you can paste the link in the chat and people can look at it.
Yeah, it was clearer earlier, but it got really blurry.
Apologies, I was moving stuff around, trying to make
Okay,
it bigger,
there.
which I probably made it worse. So let me
Yeah.
see if I can.
But basically, like, we have different terms that we're using to describe like the tracker network, the crowdsourced network. Accessory is another one. It's like tag, location, tag, accessory, location. Like, there's all these different terms that we're using. So the idea is it doesn't have to be right away, but eventually when we agree, we can then go back and change all of our text to fit these definitions.
So is the ask here to review what's red or green? I want to get like a clear understanding of
Yeah,
what
so
you're looking for feedback.
it's the green ones. So if you go onto the GitHub page,
Yeah.
you can read it a little bit more clearly. But that's where I talk about all the different definitions.
And sorry, is it okay if we kind of speak out of turn here, Sean, or do we want us to? Okay, great.
Just speak at this point.
Yeah. The right-hand side again is from your document or the accessory protocol?
It's in our document, but it drew from a lot of the definitions from the accessory protocol document.
Stage pull request, right? So it's showing what's old and what's new.
Got it.
So the old stuff is on the left pane. The green stuff is the new stuff.
So one thought might be, it'd be nice to have a common source eventually for all these. You could, and you may have new terms that you want to define. We could define them in your document, and then for existing terms that you use that are defined in the accessory protocol, just refer to it for now.
Yeah, I think that was the other thing. This is why this is also a draft pull request, not a full one, because I think for exactly this question of where should they ultimately live. And so I think that it might be, at least from a readability point of view, annoying to have to click to a different document to review definitions. So I don't know if there's an IETF way of like embedding I don't think there's a way to just embed.
Unfortunately, there's not. these are like text documents, right? So there's really no way. So unfortunately, it's better to have one source of truth, so to speak. So I think while it's annoying that people have to click back and forth, I think unfortunately that's probably the way they gotta roll. Just because it, like, if we start having the same definition in two places, we're gonna get dinged for that too, right? Because if they ever get alignment or whatever, commas missing or whatever, somebody's gonna say something. So it's probably better just to have them in one point, and then in the terminology section, you could say the definitions there apply, and here's where we tweak the one definition, or something like that, or we add new ones, something like that.
Mm-hmm. So Maggie, do you want to? Would you be okay updating the accessory protocol document
Yeah,
with anything new?
I can do that. It'll make it easier for you to see the changes from. I can do that. Yeah, I can make a draft PR and put it on your document.
All right. Do you want me to keep scrolling, or are we
I
giving
think
people
those were the
homework?
major items. It sounds like we'll get to
Yeah.
remote disablement later. And I guess the other thing I'll
Yeah.
say is that, myself and Shailesh and Jesse have all been working on this. So like if people have other comments, you should just feel free to make them on the GitHub.
Yep.
We are
Again,
trying to
yeah.
we are trying to, I don't know if we're actually going to meet in July or not, like you said, but like we are trying to get a new version of this out in the next couple weeks, if we can.
So maybe we can jump into that. So I was thinking that we wouldn't normally, we don't have to meet at an IETF meeting. We can meet as frequently or infrequently as we want, because of these virtual interims. And it seems like a lot of people don't normally get on planes to go to the IETF. So it might be okay that we meet virtually. And so maybe we don't meet at the IETF 123, and we just try to schedule a meeting for August or something, and do a couple weeks later, or maybe like do yeah, as Christine says, maybe more frequently we can meet for just an hour and go through stuff and kind of move stuff at a quicker pace. Does anybody have any real heartburn with that? Maggie?
I think we should determine the time based on how much more work we decide we need to do at the end of this meeting, right?
Yeah,
Like I
fair
don't
enough. Yeah,
want to
yeah,
push it out so far and then people are just sitting around, but we should
yeah.
have enough time for people to iterate as they need to iterate.
They correct, right? That's really the way to do it. But I mean, the general thinking here is that like we probably won't schedule a session, and then we can do one sometime in July. So yeah. All right, cool. So do we want to move on to Sadiqa's slides at this point then?
Sounds good. Will you be able to present, Sean?
So they're up. Can you press any buttons to make it go forward? Do I need to do it?
Not working.
Okay, so I'm sharing them. So just say next when you go to the next slide. All right.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Siddiqa from Google. So I will talk about the remote disablement, which we touched a little bit last time. We worked on some scenarios, inputs from Brent and Maggie, with inputs from them, and then we would like to get more thoughts and inputs from the working group also. That's why I will be doing a recap of the problem and then talk about some scenarios that we are trying to solve, and also benign scenarios that may be impacted in a negative way, and then talk about potential next steps in terms of what conditions we should have or what recommendations we can have for the platforms. Next, please. Okay, so the problem was, what if someone repeatedly gets unknown tracker alerts? Maybe it is well hidden in a car, maybe speaker removed. For whatever reason, they are using all the available tools, but they are not able to find the tracker, which means they won't be able to disable it. And the question is, should the accessory protocol provide a way to remotely disable the tracker, without remotely meaning without physical access to the tracker? Next, please. Okay, so scenario number 1 is the actual problem actually we are trying to solve. In this case, there's a victim receives an unknown tracker alert on their phone, using all the available tools, precision finding, play sound, everything, but they are still not able to find it. In the very best case, maybe they can take it to mechanic to search the car better. Even in that case, it may take X hours to find it and disable it, which potentially gives the abuser more time to track. And potentially even worst case, maybe it's not found even with mechanic or law enforcement help. So in this scenario, having the remote disablement option will help this user. Scenario number 2. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is more like a benign scenario that we may be breaking if we provide remote disablement. Now, think about a user travels in an Uber and forgets their backpack in Uber. And then the driver gets an alert, in this case, that an unknown tracker is traveling with them. And the driver just gets panicked, doesn't think much, and just hits some disable button that they see in the UI. I think most of the cases we can expect the driver to make sense of the situation, maybe try to find the tracker. But I think in the worst case, we should still think about they just don't understand what's going on and they just hit the button to disable it. And from the user perspective, now user just lost their bag. They want to find it. And this is really the time they need the crowdsourced network to find their item. This is really where it is useful. But now that the tracker is disabled, they are not able to find it. So basically, this is taking away all the benefits of the finding methodology. Corbin?
Actually, go ahead, and then when you're done with the scenarios,
Sure.
I want to bring some up.
Sounds good, sure. Next slide. And then scenario number 3, you have a bike with a tracker on it, and then it's stolen. And then the thief gets an alert about the tracker and disables it. It's also possible to, I guess, manually scan and disable, and potentially the thief can find the tracker and disable it. So in the end, tracker is disabled and owner is not able to find their bike. So this is yet another scenario where with remote disablement, we may be defeating the purpose of the finding network. Next slide, please. So with these scenarios in mind, and I have them at the bottom of this slide, so as a reminder, and basically the question is, what should be the conditions that we provide remote disablement option? There are, I think, some conditions are relatively obvious, like, for example, we should allow it for only tags in the Bluetooth range. We should allow it for the tags in the separated mode only, not if the owner is around. I think that there may be other questions, like, do we do it permanently or temporary. And the bottom line is really thoughts of this group on the trade-off between the protections that we provide for scenario number 1, which is the real stalking scenario, and the annoyance that we bring with scenarios number 2 and 3. And there are, in the next slide, I have some recommendations. If we can go to the next slide and we can come back to this one. There can be some recommendations for platforms which we provide to reduce the likelihood of accidental disablement. In this case, the Uber driver being panicked and trying to disable right away. I think we can do some things at the platform level. For example, make this disablement option available only after an alert has been shown, or after the user spends some time for searching it. So make sure they don't try to disable right away, but they spend some time using the available tools and only then make it available. I think these are some sort of mitigations. But again, if we can come to the previous slide, Sean. Yeah, still, we should define these conditions, I think, and then I'll. That's all I have. We can have some thoughts and comments from the group here.
I'm really glad we're chatting about this. I appreciate you making these slides. So thanks for bringing that. One of the things that I've been mulling over as you were talking and kind of separately is the impact, and I think it's on some levels reflected in the scenario 2, but what quote unquote false alerts, right? It's not a false alert in that it's alerting because of the conditions, but it's false in the sense that that unwanted tracking is not happening, right? So not on a technical level, but on a user experience level. And I wonder if, as we talk about this, we could also if it's within scope of this work group, think about how to get false alerts under control. Those kinds of false alerts, like what are some of the things that we can do, like prioritizing mechanisms for shared items, right? So if it's a set of keys that somebody has on a bus that was their partner's that they took this morning, and so that somebody on a bus isn't disabling someone else's keys, like are there ways that we can talk to or encourage accessory manufacturers and companies to prioritize some of those mechanisms, or bug reporting, right? So that companies can test, like, is this a bug that this is showing an alert? So just wanted to plant that seed. And then I really I like the temporary disablement. I like users spending time searching for it. I like how you're thinking about some signals that don't necessarily, like user 2 or scenario 2 where the person has lost their item, like we're not completely disabling something, and it might give the victim time, if it is a victim, to be able to identify it. I appreciate those two things.
All right, Christina. Christine, sorry.
To Safari. Can everybody hear me? Yay, okay. So my thoughts on this are, I don't want to walk back on kind of our earlier on discussions where Eva and the EFF made a really good point that we don't want to value property over people. And so I thought that the kind of overall decision on that point was that despite it making it, less convenient for finding your lost stuff, we would prefer to make that trade-off to prevent stalking behaviors. So I feel like in scenario number 2 and scenario number 3, like, I mean, and not to like rebut every single point that people are making, but I feel like in most of these scenarios, if we don't err on the side of preventing anti-stalking, these things can be used for stalking so easily. If there's a female Uber driver and there's like a creepy rider, you know, they could leave their bag in the car and then stalk them. We don't want that. If somebody's on the bus and they took their partner's keys, like, we don't want that person who's potentially now being exposed to, you know, being stalked by their partner. So like, we would probably prefer that to be disabled, because the main scenarios that have been researched in this area are that people who are being stalked by their cohabitating partners are able to be easily stalked with tracking devices. And, you know, when these tracking devices first came out, all of these points are made about the reset period on tracking and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure that I really like the fact that we have disablement. And I mean, if something gets disabled by mistake, I think I would prefer that over somebody being stalked. And I think that's kind of what we as a group had agreed upon. So I want to make sure that we're careful and we don't walk back on any of those things.
All right. I guess with no hat on, I guess one of the things I'm thinking about when we develop these protocols is that we have to support the ability to do it, and maybe not actually pick the actually when it gets done, like after 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we have to support the ability, and then the people who are implementing it get to decide what their level of comfort is turning it on or off, because I think that's where we get functionality, and the market then decides what the deal is, and people that want to turn knobs can, and it's not us really picking. We might have to, we could suggest something, but not actually pick a time like, hey, after 5 minutes do blah, because I think that's gonna that way leads to madness, I think. Brent, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, that's I was thinking a similar line of thought, Sean. So maybe 2 quick comments, just to remind the group, we definitely have disablement in the accessory protocol already. It's been there for a long time. I just want to clarify that this is a enhanced version of that, where you wouldn't have to have physical access to it, and we're looking at potentially making that better with what Sitica has here. The second thing that I wanted to maybe ask a question about is, are we concerned about, in scenario 1, where a person spends time, they get the alert, they spend time trying to find it, they tap, you know, keep tapping play sound, they can hear it in their car, but they can't locate it, that if they have a temporary disablement button they press, that's going to obviously time out at some point. Is there extra anxiety around that? Of, hey, I've protected myself now, I'm feeling good for the next, say, 12 hours, but now the clock is ticking again. And, you know, victims are, you know, obviously in a very panic state, can be very high anxiety, can be difficult to reason in productive ways. Are we maybe doing a disservice particularly if it's temporary? I think if it's permanent, that maybe concern goes away in my mind. Something to think about.
Maggie?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree we want to be careful about like not walking back any commitments. But I also just think that we need to think about like from a cost benefit point of view, like if the benefit to someone in scenario 1 is very minimal, but the cost to people in like other scenarios who are using it for benign purposes is very high, then I think that's something that we would want to think about really carefully before implementing. Like, I don't think it's this like totally binary thing. And I think, but how to actually answer that question is pretty difficult. I think this is where we're going to need feedback from people who are either, you know, have experienced this themselves, or who have, or who are working with people, to get a sense of like what like, well, one, how often are we in this scenario where the remote disablement is necessary? And then two, what kinds of windows are acceptable, right? And to like Brent's question too, like, well, would snoozing it be okay? And also one of the other things that we talked about was like, well, maybe you can set it up so that like a tag will not, you won't participate in the network, but that doesn't really work if everyone else is still participating in the network. So I think we need to get an understanding of what would be most beneficial, and then weigh that against the potential downsides, basically.
All right, Corbin.
I just wanted to clarify that when I was speaking earlier, I was talking about reducing false alerts, which in my mind means those that are not stalking occurring. I totally appreciate the example of the creepy Uber passenger and an Uber driver who was stalked intentionally. On the bus scenario, I was talking about like a fellow passenger who's not connected to the two parties with the shared keys. And just thinking too about the experience of getting false alerts and having a heightened fear that you're being stalked when you're actually not being stalked. So that's the side of that I was saying I would encourage us to like try to think about helping reduce those as well as we think about remote disablement, because it is an issue, an ongoing issue. But totally agree we should prioritize safety.
All right, Erica.
Yeah, thank you, Christine, for bringing that up and going back to that original kind of fundamental idea about protecting people over property. I do think it's a really important piece to like keep in mind, and like as Maggie said, finding that balance. I think one of the pieces of figuring out the balance is looking at the other factors of gaining and accessing safety. And in the other scenarios, there are other options. Whether or not they work or not is kind of irrelevant in some way. But there are other options for, if you are an Uber, for example. Like I've lost things in an Uber without location tracking devices, and because it's all coordinated in the app, I can communicate with the driver or find it. So there's alternative things and pathways that the user could take in that moment to try to recover their devices. Whereas with scenario one, the alternatives for a person who's trying to find something and is terrified that somebody is misusing it against them are fewer. And I think that that's one of the factors that kind of help us to look at weighing the risks and the realities in the scenario. And we definitely have heard of scenario one happening. With survivors talking about searching their homes and just not being able to find these devices, but getting the alert. So we know that this is a real scenario, not a hypothetical one.
Okay, we've drained the queue here. Should I move on to the next slide?
I already went through that, but I think yeah, we can. Yeah, okay, that's it. Actually, there is no more.
All right.
Yeah, we already.
Yeah. All right. So that's good. It's good that we've I guess gone back and formalized our, people are more important than things. That's always good to remember. And I think it's probably good that we probably think about supporting the ability to do something and not picking the time. I think that's something that came up. Maggie, I see you're still in the queue. Did you jump in for something else, or?
I guess what I wanted to do was I wanted to better understand what people think that we should do moving forward. So I think personally, I think there should be remote disablement, but that there should be some criteria for it so that and also the other thing is like remote disablement can be abused as well, right? To disable a victim's tracker, right? So I think there need to be criteria, but I think, and the hard part will be coming up with what those criteria are. But if other people, it sounds like people might not agree with that. So I think I want to understand, like we need to have a couple different scenarios that we might pursue, like how do we move forward from here? Like, are we going to say there should be remote disablement and it should be basically equivalent to like receiving a passive alert, or remote disablement should have a higher bar? Should it have a really high bar? Should it be like a 24 hours thing? Should it be like a 1 hours thing? I think it would help if we had a couple different scenarios, and then maybe we could kind of decide which ones we think are most reasonable.
Becker?
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand what people mean by criteria. And looking at this list, I don't see how these are enforceable in any meaningful way. Any criteria has to be enforceable at the tag, because otherwise I'll just send, because the attacker isn't going to comply with any of these things. So, like you can ask iOS to do whatever you want, but if you allow me, if surely it's a requirement that I not have to have an iPhone or an Android device to disable a tag that's allegedly stalking me, and therefore you have the problem the attackers are non-compliant transmitter.
So I think there are two separate things. Recommendations for platforms is more like what platform can do to mitigate some things, but what the manufacturer should do is actually on the previous slide. If we can go there, Sean. If I understood you correctly, Eric, I think this is what you're looking for.
Right. What I'm saying is the tag receives some signal. It says disable yourself, and no conditions can be enforced on that signal that cannot be observed by the tag itself.
Sorry, was it a question?
So
That
operating
was a
system,
statement of what I believe the technical constraints are. I think like this seems like a good, looking at this list seems like a good way to think about this, which is like if I'm allowed to suppress transmission in temporary mode, in separated mode for 24 hours, then like effectively any attacker who is in physical proximity to the tag when it's in separated mode can prevent it from being tracked permanently, right? All I have to do is retransmit the suppressed code every 24 hours. So maybe that's good, maybe that's not, but that's the implication of like a design like this.
Yeah, unless there's some way to authenticate who the person who sent the tag was, right?
Well, no, but the entire principle of this is that some person unknown to me has put a tag near me, and I would like it to stop transmitting my location. And so there's no that's my point, is that there's no relationship between the tag owner and the person who wants to suppress the transmission.
So what's the feedback then you have?
I think that like my feedback is that this is too low level granularity to think about the problem. We're trying to understand is what it is we're trying to achieve to make this happen, and what can actually be observable by the tag.
Maybe I'm having trouble hearing. I couldn't hear.
I think you might be saying that the only thing that the tag observes is whether it gets turned off or not, right? So it's like who has the platform is the one that has to keep track of the logic to determine whether or not to send the signal or not, the disablement signal or not.
Well, right, but I'm saying the platform that's not a security condition; it's a convenience condition from the platform, because from the the plot, you can't trust any conditions that are enforced in the platform. Right? Those are only convenience conditions, not security conditions.
Oh, it's because it will still be available through the platform because the basically the opportunity to disable will be provided by the platform. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, what I'm saying, I'm gonna try again. What I'm saying is the tag is like a radio receiver, right? And it's receiving signals from like some device it's never seen before that says things like turn yourself off, right? And so like it can't know what's going on that device. And so basically it's got to follow some simple set of rules that only agree to facts observable to it. And so separated mode is a fact, is observable to it. Has the user, like on the next slide, has the user search for the tag? Like that it can't possibly like determine that, right? So like you have to assume that whoever is sending the signal is an attacker, and their goal is to make the tag worthless. And so like that's the posture in terms of and and make anti-theft the anti-theft function this worthless. But like a lot of implement is like the anti-theft basically doesn't work anymore. And so like, and that's a trade-off that one guy's making, but I'm just saying like that's the implication of that. If we're disablement has like any time period like the day is an issue, you sit there and just transmit. Stop. Don't report all the time. Right?
How about I follow up offline with Aker on this because I couldn't
Yeah, there was some
hear half
garble.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some garbledness going on. So if you could follow up, that'd be great. All right, so we're approaching like 13 or 14 minutes left in the session. Where do we think we'd like to go next? Christine, do you want to jump to your document?
Yeah, I think there's something that needs to be done to like reactivate it. It wasn't clear to me what steps I have to take to activate it because I got that email that something was expiring.
Yeah, so when a document expires, you can do what's called a keep alive version, where you literally just change the dates and change the version number and upload it to keep the document alive. Often that's what you do to just like keep it in like fresh in people's minds. So there's no problem with that. And as an author, you can submit things and make it happen. If you have any problems with getting that done, you can contact Eric or I, and we can get other people to press buttons like Deb to make sure things get published. But again, as an author, feel free to put whatever you want in the document, and then people will let you know whether they like it or not. It's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, maybe I'll just like email you and EKR because I'm not sure if I make that change on GitHub or in Data Tracker or exactly what
so
the process.
yes. So if you have it loaded through GitHub, there's a way to do a release. And so I can show you how to do that.
Oh, so I just make a new release.
You can make a new release, and if the tooling's all set up properly, it should just fire off a message to the data.
It's not a release that does it. It's an increment in the version number and the tags.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can walk you through it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, they internet drafts expire after 6 months, and so the idea is that we should like basically keep them alive. And again, if you just make any changes, including the version number and the date, it'll automatically update the thing.
Okay.
You just have to be on the lookout to like approve of a document that came through, because they want to make sure it's not being spammed, right? That's all it really is. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's an action item for me. So we can talk about our document if you want to just pull up the GitHub. I don't have an issue for this, but I posted in Slack that a German colleague found a device that is able to be registered in their Find My as an accessory, and there's like no anti-tracking alerts, and it wasn't being detected by AirGuard. So that definitely was a concern for me, and one of the things that we tried to recommend in the finding document was that we want to prevent devices from leveraging the protocol that are not authorized and non-compliant. So yeah, I think there's still some work to be done on that. I don't know if we have to talk to like the crypto board or something, maybe recommending a protocol or mechanism to do better endpoint authentication so that malicious devices can't leverage the finding protocol.
I basically think that the best way forward is that you need to suggest something, and then we ask for feedback on it. Because I think asking for people to tell us what will work is not gonna result in an answer. So I think
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so we presented like a few meetings ago, we presented our suggestion, but then I don't think there's been too much like back and forth. So yeah, I'm having trouble figuring out how to drive this forward. Because yeah, there just hasn't been, and maybe it's we have so many documents. I don't know if that's
So
part of it. Maybe we're
I'll,
diluting our
I'll
efforts.
I'll let you know that I think that 4 is a low number actually.
Okay.
I literally think you should just put in what you want or you think that is reasonable and push for it. And
Okay.
if there's no objection, then I think we're probably okay. And a lot of times with people will wait to provide a lot of input till later. So they want a more full-fledged kind of like thing to review. And I think that's where we're probably headed.
Okay.
Maggie?
Yeah, so I mean, I think when we started working on the threat model document, we said we would kind of work on these in parallel. But I think I am trying to get the threat model document to the point where like it's mostly done in the next couple weeks. But then I want to get feedback from like I talked about like victim service providers and people. So like it might change a lot, but I want to. You should go ahead and look at it because I think there might be stuff in there that's relevant. And so like I've been trying to flesh out not just the attacks, which would be useful. I mean, and you sent me some links that I put in there. So some of that stuff you already know. But then also like design requirements and design constraints and like things that we should be keeping in mind. And so like maybe that will help you think about things that should go in your document, or you can just give me feedback on what should be better about our document, which would also be useful. So, and then we could also touch base about that. And then the other thing I would say is that like we had that really useful discussion about the multi-dealer secret sharing. And I know that that's like a big part of what's in your document right now. And there were some concerns about that. So maybe thinking about whether or not that makes sense to be something to pursue, or like what our other options are, and then kind of go from there. And like maybe it's not clear which option is the best, and maybe it makes sense to write out 2 or 3 different possible architectures or something like that, and then figure out which one to drill down. Maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I definitely think like it would be helpful if we could get some of the authors of the multi-dealer secret sharing paper involved, just because it's particularly difficult thing to try and implement a flavor of something that somebody else theoretically proposed. So by having some of those people involved, I think would really help leverage that, because I thought it was a good idea, but also like I am not a cryptographer. So like that, and that's where we have so many issues in practice, misinterpreting the protocol. So yeah, having some of those people involved, trying to drive engagement from them, I think would be helpful. I'm just not really sure how to motivate that.
All right, we're coming up on about 5 minutes left. So I guess I would like to try to steer us towards more frequent meetings. And so I guess I want to get everybody else's sense of when do we think we should do this again? Like, so the deal is we have to have like a 1 week. There's a bit of a blackout window for not meeting like a couple of weeks before the IETF meeting and maybe a week after because everyone's dead. But you know, when do we think the next time we'd like to meet would be? Sometime in July? Do you want to try for August? Do you want to set up a regular cadence? We can do that. It's kind of up to you guys.
Monthly
Fair
or
enough.
bi-monthly cadence sounds good to me.
So let's try to set up a monthly cadence, and then if we need to skip them, we can just cancel them. And that will get on people's calendar. So I'll try to set one up for sometime in later July, and we'll go from there. Because I think, when is the IETF meeting? No, that's the end of. So maybe we could try to do first week of July, and then we try to maybe do one the first week of August. That could work because looking at the calendar, that could work. Deb is telling it so before July 7th or after the start of August, and we'll just see what happens. And again, so that's nice because we can just set up a regular cadence and start going through the documents. So we don't always have to talk about the document every time, one of the documents every time, but I think we should try to focus on doing things before. So I will try to get out a time, and basically I think it gets easier to pick a time in the future once we get on people's calendars. So I think the first couple times will be a little sketchy, but then going farther out, hopefully we'll be able to keep going. Does that sound like a plan? All right, I see some nodding heads. Maggie?
I was just going to make a suggestion in terms of the remote disablement thing, because I think that's the most concrete thing that, like, I think we need lots of people's input on. I was wondering if Sadika, if you would be willing to, and I'd be happy to work with you for us to come up with like a bunch of different possible permutations of like ways to move forward, because we're getting the concern on the one end of like we really need this feature, and then we're getting concern on the other end of like this feature is going to take it down the entire network, and that would also be really bad. So I'd like us to get a sense of the design space. So I'd be happy to help work with you on that. Maybe we could try to do
Sounds
that
good.
for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we can put together a more concrete proposal or a number of proposals too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
sounds good.
And if anyone else wants to work with us on that too, that would be great. I just I want to give people some concrete options. I think that maybe that
Right.
will help us see the issues. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're wrapping it up. Thanks all for participating. Erica, thanks for agreeing to take notes. Next time we'll make somebody else be the Stucky. And again, I'll try to get an email out. If this time kind of works, that'll work. Corbin, I just want to make sure that Drew and Brent don't have a standing meeting at 9:30 every first week of the month. But if we can if this time works, then maybe we can just kind of suggest this and just keep going forward with this time. I don't want to suggest crazy hours where people are up in the middle of the night, because I think that makes people less productive. And it seems like a lot of people are based in the US time zone. So go from there. Taro, thank you. Yeah, Taro, thanks for dialing in from the European time zone. I appreciate that. And Maggie, you might be there as well. So, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. And again, look for the next announcement for the next meeting. All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.